Jerry Buting, thank you very much for joining us again.
My pleasure.
Now, we are hearing Brendan Dassey out in 90 days. How much of that is a reality?
Well, the reality at this point, the federal judge, ordered that the entire confession was, at least from the March 1st interrogation, was to be thrown out of court, not usable. And they have to then retry him without that confession in 90 days or appeal or release him. And I really don't think there's going to be enough for them to retry the case under the ruling as it is now. There really wasn't anything incriminating against Brendan other than the confession. So they are the state is either going to have to appeal the case to Federal Court of Appeals in Chicago, or he will probably be out in 90 days.
And what does it mean for the law enforcement officers that were involved in the original case? Is there any repercussions for them?
Well, not necessarily, at least not directly from the decision. It's a black mark against their record, though, but because the judge was highly critical of the techniques that they used, and so that will. If a conviction or murder conviction is reversed because of the conduct of particular officers, it's a bad mark on their record. But it doesn't necessarily mean that because of this decision they're going to receive specific repercussions.
Now, did you have any help in providing services or information or support of any kind to help with Brendan Dassey's appeal?
Well, what we did at the very beginning of his appeal, we were prepared for the state to call Brendan Dassey at our trial, and in fact, we were at least part of us was hoping that they would do so, because we thought we could show with our expert how coercive and suggestive the interrogation was, and to argue that the prosecution would go to the lengths of, bringing down this 16-year-old boy with learning disabilities and ensnaring him into this false narrative, would show just how desperate they were to get Steven Avery. And if they were willing to go to those lengths, how much farther is it to argue that they could be planting evidence and really trying to frame Steven Avery. So we were prepared, and we had an expert who had looked at it, and then the state didn't use him in our case, and so we turned all of that over to Brendan's appeal lawyers and worked with him a little bit to kind of bring him up to speed, but then the rest of it was handled by his two very excellent lawyers from Northwestern University Law School.
So how do you feel about the news about Brendan, and where were you when you heard the news? Let me just say this. When we heard about Brendan's conviction being overturned, Sam and I, we were texting each other. We were very excited. A lot of people contacted Sam like she had something to do with the trial. You actually did. So how did it make you feel when you heard the news, and where were you when you heard it?
Well, I was extremely gratified and, a certain amount of vindication, because we'd been arguing from the beginning that this confession was unreliable, that it was coerced, that it was, the words were actually fed to him by the officers. And the state courts, it's frankly embarrassing that the state of Wisconsin courts were unwilling to conclude that, even when they thought, well, maybe there's some problems with this. It's never mind. It's not that serious, So it's definitely vindication for the arguments that we were raising. I was actually on a plane coming back from Florida, where I had just spoken to a National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers meeting, and I was on Wi-Fi, so I love Wi-Fi in planes. It's a great development. And my social media was exploding. I mean, it was so fast that within 10 minutes of the decision coming down, I was hearing from all over the world. It's just amazing how interconnected we are now.
Jerry, what does this mean for Steven Avery and his case?
Well, that's a good question, and ultimately that's going to have to be up to his new attorney and team of attorneys who are working on trying to get him a new trial. As far as a direct impact, because the state didn't use Brendan Dassey's confession at Stephen Avery's trial, it may not have an immediate impact as grounds for a new trial for Stephen. But on the other hand, clearly the confession impacted Stephen's case because 10 months later, the jurors that we had to pick from to try and find a fair jury in his case, 129 out of 130 questionnaires came back saying, we think he's guilty, before they even started. And that was unquestionably because of this false confession narrative that was presented by the prosecution. So it did impact his case, even if it wasn't directly introduced. And legally, whether that matters is going to depend on what kind of arguments his new attorney raises, I think.
Now, we have heard Netflix announced a Making a Murderer Season 2. At the risk of making this all about a TV show again, can you give us any insight into what Season 2 will be? And will you or Dean Strang, your co-counsel, have anything to do with it?
I don't know what exactly the producers are going to do with the second season. Dean and I were both interviewed by them already, so whether we end up whether they use us in that, I don't know. I don't have any control over that. I'm sure, though, that from some of the public comments that they've made, that they do intend to follow any new developments, and certainly Brendan Dassey's conviction being reversed will be one of those. So I imagine they're probably interviewing, family members and other people behind the scenes, just like they did us. And I'm sure it'll be interesting, whatever they come up with.
And Jerry, just quickly, have you had the opportunity to speak to Stephen or Brendan about the case at the moment, about the fact that he could be released in 90 days?
No, and in America you can't do that. If a party is represented by another attorney, then another attorney can't contact him.
Oh, bugger.
Yeah. So
I've been dying to know how he feels because he's so cute. Anyway.
You know what? Yeah. That would have been a great defense. Your Honor, he didn't do it. He's cute.
He just wants to build a veggie patch in the middle of nowhere. Hey, and just quickly, Jerry, do you know if is his parents still around? I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Both. Now, Brendan's parents was Barb Yonda was Brendan's mother. His grandparents are Stephen Avery's parents, so that would be Dolores and Alan.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I just saw on the day the decision. This is the interesting thing. On the day the decision came down, they were visiting Stephen Avery at that point, so they were able actually to tell him directly, the family members, that this decision had come down and Brendan had been reversed. And I believe they were quoted publicly as saying that he was really shocked and pleased, but really surprised because there'd been so many other false hopes raised over the years. So I'm sure that both of them are thrilled, and you'll probably hear more from his attorneys, Stephen Drizzen and Laura Nyrider at Northwestern. I don't know that they've done a lot of interviews yet, but I'm sure they probably will at some point when we hear whether or not the state is going to try and appeal this decision or not.
Well, we wish them all the very best with that too. Jerry, have you ever used the defense of he's cute?
No, I'm afraid that one has escaped me.
It's yours though, if you want it. It's yours. Well, we look. Excuse me. We do hope it turns out all the very best for Brendan Dassey in 90 days and he will be home. And look, for all you did to make it happen as well, congratulations. And thank you very much for talking to us, Jerry Buting.
Yeah, thanks so much. You should be very proud of yourself.
I am. I'm very happy, and I'm anxious to come to Australia in November and meet with some people and talk about their thoughts on it as well. So,
I will track you down.